Welcome to the Awakened Sober Podcast. It's a podcast about life and recovery through Christ. How's everybody doing today? I'm glad everybody got to show up. It's been a while since we've all been here together.
It has been.
It's been,
and we're here together today, and I'm really happy to see that.
The last time it was a little busy.
It was.
It's a little busy.
We're here today.
Yes.
Yeah, and today's going to be a fun day.
Today's going to be a great day. I'm very honored for today's podcast.
Why is that?
We have a special guest today, and it is...
his name is Will.
His name is Will, and Will is one of our sponsor.
Yeah?
What's our sponsor? Tactile Turn, buddy.
Tactile Turn, man. We got stuff all over the place.
Yeah, we do.
Got copper.
This one.
Oh, he's gonna go through the whole thing, Will.
Yeah.
He's gonna break out copper, Zerd.
I got the Grinch. The Grinch. Yeah.
Man, this guy.
Yeah. The reverse 8-bit. Yes. Yes.
The reverse.
Well, while he's going through them all, Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. It's good to see you guys. It really is. It's been a couple weeks, and I missed you. I missed you guys so much.
I wish we could say the same.
I know, me too. But no, life is good, man. Work's good. Recovery's going well. Last Sunday, we celebrated 2 years sober.
Yeah,
congratulations.
So, thank you. Golf clap.
Yes.
And starting another new step with my sponsor on Saturday. So I'm looking forward to that. I got 3 days off of work, and I'm going to take advantage.
I bet you are.
Oh, I'm going to take advantage of it. It's going to be nice. But yeah, man, everything's good. D, how are you?
I'm all right, man. Doing all right. Actually, things have gotten better. There's a light at the end of this dark tunnel I've been on for the last couple of weeks. So I'm actually excited. Today went really, really well. It was really surprising how well today went for me. and you laugh, but I was taking care of things that were messed up from the person that was in the position before me at our other facility. So it was like, oh my gosh, this is stuff back in December. What am I going to do with it? But I made it happen, and it went very smoothly. It's handled, and when the person comes in and takes this position from me, it's not going to be as hectic as it was when I did.
Good.
So I feel good about that.
Yeah.
So they'll be able to do their job when they come in.
Yes, they can walk right in and just start where I dropped, pass the baton off. And they can take off running. That
See ya.
easy. They don't have to pick it up and clean up the mess and run with it. They just take off running.
Just hope they don't fall flat on their face. Jeremy?
Yeah.
How are you?
It has been a very long 72 hours at work for me. Just busy. Had some guys at the sober living house. One of the guys, he relapsed. So dealing with that till the late hours of the morning. But other than that, everything else is going pretty good.
Good deal.
Yeah.
I guess my turn.
How are you?
It is well. It is well with my soul. Last night we kicked off. Well, actually, I can't say we kicked it off. We did a soft launch for our Celebrate Recovery, and it was fun. It was exciting just because we know we're right there. We're going to do one more soft launch next week, and then March 5th we're going to fully kick it off. And
gentlemen, invite 6 o'clock, 6:15 for dinner. Come join us next Tuesday.
Yeah, it's usually 6 o'clock for dinner, but we gotta tear down a stage and set up a stage and tear down some kid stuff and get it off to the side.
Yeah.
But that's just temporary because everything's being done. Things are being put into motion, and that we won't have to be doing that after a period of time, which is gonna be really happy.
Yeah, the toilets are installed in the new side, just no partitions yet.
I'll be there.
Yeah, it's a blast, man. It's good to see. Huh?
I need a partition.
No, you don't, but better to have one. We don't want to see everybody going to the bathroom.
Nah.
There's not even doors on the bathrooms yet.
This is a church, dang it.
Oh, and there's a window in the men's room at the toilet, dude. You don't want to see that.
Where I went to college in Nebraska, it was like an old army barracks. So it was just the toilets lined up. That was it.
Just wide open.
It was wide open.
That's
awesome.
He went to school in Nebraska.
I went to the vacation where I stayed at on vacation. The bathrooms were like that. There was no partitions in between the toilet stools, man.
Yeah.
So,
that's not a vacation.
There was nothing in
prison.
There was no walls between the showers either.
I went on a 5-year
prison
vacation.
was not a vacation, brother.
Well, I didn't have
It was
to
a sabbatical.
It's sabbatical. There you go.
Didn't have to pay for anything, right?
No.
Oh, Will.
I don't know. It's the state of Florida, man. They charge me for being there.
Anyway,
Hey, Will, how are you doing? Good to have you here.
Doing well. Excited to be a part of this, and looks like you got a good group of guys around you.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We will give each other a hard time. One of them walked in too late to have an excellent dinner. My wife has been cooking on Wednesday nights for us for the podcast, and she made fajitas tonight. So they were good and yummy.
Yeah.
I guess Jeremy be stopping by
I will be.
the kitchen on the way out.
Yeah,
he'll
those
take it to
Rosalitas
go.
over there, and I'm like,
No.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able
Take
to.
mine, but no.
Hopefully we could come down by you
Cut the
and
mic off.
go for a tour.
What did you say? Something about a mic?
What
I
happened,
was
Will?
just gonna say, you can cut the mic off and go grab some fajitas.
Yeah.
I like them already.
Oh,
Well, I mean, food is a necessary part of recovery, right?
yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
We are some guys that can eat.
Uh-huh.
yeah, none of us are small in this room.
No.
That would be cool to do a remote from down there. That would be really neat.
That would be.
I would love to take you guys down there. One, we could eat Trinkies right by the shop and then go for a tour in the shop. Will, how's that sound?
When you let Will maybe let us do a show in the shop.
Come on down.
He always says the same
can,
thing, just
figure
going
out-
down.
Love it.
Yeah, he'll
I don't
never
know if
turn.
we could probably figure out some way to do some sound deadening stuff because, and we don't run as many hours these days, so we can have the machines off.
I won't mind the sound.
Come on down.
That'd be
That'd be
excellent.
awesome. Thank
So-
you.
Give us a little bit about yourself, some background. Where were you born, raised? Any religious upbringing?
So born in Dallas, currently live in Richardson, just outside of Dallas. So haven't moved very far. I guess have pretty much stayed in Dallas my entire life or somewhere around Dallas. Didn't have a religious, childhood. My next door neighbors were Southern Baptists and went to church with them a few times. Was in Boy Scouts and an Eagle Scout, and really that was the most church I ever really did. Kind of, we were the ushers every fifth Sunday that there was. So a couple times a year. So really, didn't do a whole lot of spiritual anything. Didn't do a whole lot of religious anything as a kid. My parents were somewhat raised in Christian churches, but they, I think somewhere in like their teens, were kind of given the option to go or not. And they decided to kind of stop, I guess. And so they were never, I don't remember them ever talking about faith of any sort, which is kind of a shame. I sobered up, I guess, effectively a couple weeks after my dad passed away, or a week after my dad passed away. And so, there was never any chance to talk to him about it. And really my mom just, she liked the church for some reasons, but she really never made it a priority in adulthood. And there were some times that she'd mentioned how she sort of regretted that. But, religion was just never a huge piece of, my upbringing.
It's for quite a few of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it was, I went to Catholic school, K through 12, and I got the same kind of thing. I turned 12 or 13, and I got that choice, and I stopped going because what 13-year-old wants to go to church?
I guess that's why we don't give our kids a choice.
Yeah, mine won't have one. I know that.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. So tell us about your childhood.
Generally pretty good. So my parents, like we were talking about sort of before the podcast started, my parents made scale models, and so they had a small business. And so I kind of grew up around their small business and in their shop. So they mostly did like plastic and wood based stuff. My dad, actually, my mom started the business, which is kind of a strange thing, I guess, for a woman in, I guess it was the early 70s. She went to school and, got out of school and married a guy and started this little business. And my dad came along a few years later and helped out, but it was pretty much just them and their small business. And So when I was a kid, it was pretty much them, and occasionally they'd have one or two people, but for the most part, they just needed, help here and there. And so when I was really little, I got to help out with making trees and other random little things for their scale models. So they did, developments in and around Dallas, and some buildings are in and around Dallas. So they were always just needing some, sometimes very low skilled labor. And so I got to help out, and I just, kind of grew up in their shop. And as I grew a little older, got to help out with, moving things around, and got to do slightly more skilled stuff. But generally it was a pretty boring middle class, lifestyle. My parents worked pretty hard. My dad worked really hard. And they were, generally good parents. They weren't heavy drinkers or anything. They never used any drugs that I know of. I think they would have, a beer at night, pretty much every night, and that was it. And so when I started drinking sometime, I guess probably 13 or 14, and it wasn't particularly common at that age, but I pretty much always just wanted to go overboard. And there was always a question of like, why do I want to do this way when my parents never modeled any sort of, overboard thing. But as I grew older, I learned that my mom's side of the family has a fair amount of alcoholism in it. And so it started to make a little more sense when, the genetic component is strong on that side of the family. And yeah, but generally, good upbringing, did decently in school, even through high school, sort of went off the rails towards the end of high school. Well, really beginning of college. So, nothing particularly interesting with childhood. Just kind of.
He lived a nice, boring life.
Yeah.
Quote unquote normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, that's the weird thing, right? Like my sister and I can talk about it. And my sister, when she tells the stories of our childhood, it's, our mom was a, completely self-absorbed person. And like, I always thought my mom was a nice lady. And, it's, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that, but
No, not
my
in our
sister,
lives.
What's that?
I said, no, not in our lives.
So was it just you and your sister then?
Yeah, just me and my sister. Yeah, she's a year and 13 days older than me, so we're virtually Irish twins.
Wow. Seen a lot of that lately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You kind of talked a little bit about it, but what was your first drink experience like? You said about 13, 14, but what was it like the first time you remember?
So it was a buddy from Boy Scouts. I guess there were a few of us over at his house, and I guess he had access to the liquor cabinet and, mixed up. I don't even remember what it was, but I was kind of given a big glass of something and knew that there was alcohol in it, and drank it down faster than I should have, and definitely felt the effects. And I like this. There wasn't a whole lot of. I've heard people talk about how it really made them. There was just an instant. Now I find can finally feel comfortable here, and I there was probably some of that. I don't think I ever really felt like I was severely disconnected with the world when I was a kid, but there's something about alcohol that was just alluring. And that first drunk was a fun one, and hung out with him some more throughout the years, not like every weekend or anything, but definitely first going completely overboard was with him. I think probably a couple years later, maybe a year later, probably 15-ish. He had a fake ID, and we got 12 packs of Bud Light, I think it was. And for some reason, I decided, this is probably less than, I don't know, fourth or fifth time of drinking. I decided to challenge, him and a couple other guys to who's going to finish their 12 pack first. Which, I don't remember that being modeled anywhere, or, where I got the idea that drinking these as quickly as possible was going to be a good idea. And of course I ended up throwing up all over the place, and, wake up the next morning, where am I? What happened? And get told these horrible stories of, you went completely nuts. But, from very early days, I went too hard too quickly. And I think that was one of the things that was interesting, you know, as I got to know people that also had, you know, alcohol problems, starting to hear, you know, there are plenty of people that they drink for a good long time and have, you know, they have fun most of that time. And then there's some of us that just go balls to the wall from the very beginning. And, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of moderating any of my drinking ever. As soon as I had enough supply to get drunk, it was pretty much going full force for it.
What if that's like a younger kid thing?
I was just thinking, if you ain't first, you're last.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could even be fifth.
Competitive.
Yeah.
I just don't know if that's the youngster in us that makes you drink like that, or if it's just some of us, that's what we do. And
I think, you know, it's funny. It's like there's a little competitor just inside everybody, you know? Yeah. I don't know what it is, but I mean,
Will, you're not alone.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you said, you know, and you said it was pretty balls to the wall from just a couple of years after you started. When do you think you realized that you had an issue, that you had a problem with alcohol or substance?
You know, I think I pretty much tried to stay away from drugs until I graduated high school. And for some reason, somewhere around after graduating high school, I guess, you know, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks after I graduated, I moved into an apartment with a buddy of mine. And I think just having, you know, my own space made it, you know, you can do whatever you want. And, but I do remember in high school staying away from, you know, I had some friends that smoked a lot of weed and, you know, pretty much stayed away from that. But for some reason, something changed. One of my friends had, you know, access to, he had a friend that was selling Percocets. And so I think that and Valiums. And so I decided, you know, let's give this a try. And so part of the reason I didn't quite realize that I had a problem with alcohol was because I moved on to other things and eventually circled back to alcohol. But, you know, pretty quickly after I found those opiates were the thing. And so I went pretty crazy with opiates and found out that I had kidney stones when I was 19 and had to get those removed. But I was able to use the prescription for that to then go doctor shopping on the internet and got a bunch of, you know, prescriptions of hydrocodone coming every, you know, I think I had at one time like 10 different prescriptions coming through the mail every month. And at some point it just became difficult to do that. And I met a guy that, you know, I could buy some pills off of him. At some point couldn't even keep up with that. And he offered heroin, and there was, you know, probably 19 or 20 by that point. The idea of heroin was like, why would I ever want to do that? But I was getting dope sick off of not having any opiates, and you know, eventually became, you know, desperate enough that I decided, you know what, I'll give that a try. And so I snorted heroin for, I don't know, a couple years, and you know, that went on for a few years. Ended up getting on methadone. Well, probably a couple years at that point. Got on methadone for a little while, and there was a time when with the methadone clinic that you know, you're told to, or I was told to go take drug tests randomly every month, and there was one of those months that I had to take a piss test, and one of my badges of honor, although it's also a badge of shame, is every one of those things lit up, and like I had to tell the counselor, but I don't do cocaine and I don't do meth, and you know, well, you tested positive for every one of these things. And you know, it was just nuts because like there wasn't a thought in my mind that, you know, anywhere in there, and the entire time was completely unmanageable. But somehow in my brain, I was able to just justify everything that I was doing as, this is fun. And, you know, no matter what the consequences were, that the girlfriend didn't want me around and, you know, eventually dumped me, you know, somehow was able to string things along for a while, but it probably took, you know, several years. I ended up getting sober just before I turned 26. So sort of 19 to 26 is kind of this blur of just, you know, getting high and, pretty much avoiding anyone and everything, working just enough to survive and somehow keeping some of those jobs, but towards the end started getting fired from stuff. And anyway, back to the original question, when did I start realizing that I actually had a problem? It was, probably 6 years of thinking that I could somehow clean it up. And, there were periods where things got slightly better. But really towards the very end, and we can get into that before too long, things got so dark that there was no question of, do I have a problem? Of course I have a problem. There was probably a while there in that last year where I just had no idea how to stop, that I knew that I was so physically addicted to both alcohol and, opiates that I had no idea how to stop.
No, don't look at me. My question for him was, what was his last year of addiction like? And he just pretty much answered that. So
I was going to ask it in that 6-7 year period, you kind of touched on a little bit, but what were your relationships like? What was jobs like? Were you job hopping? Were you getting fired? Were you holding on to relationships? Like,
what was life like?
No, it was.
Yeah. What was life like? Yeah.
Yeah, it was a train wreck, right? I didn't finish college. So in that time, my parents' business failed when I was about 18. So as I was going into college, couldn't do FAFSA because they hadn't done their taxes in years and, didn't have the money to go do much. And so they held on to that resentment in the early days of sobriety for as long as I could, that, a bunch of my friends were given, free rides to college, and I had to kind of figure some things out. But, I think the last year, last year, I think I'd gotten fired from, I did pizza delivery through my early 20s, just because it was one of those jobs that, could do it drunk and high, or, not super drunk and super high, but the second I got off, I was, off to the races,
drunk and high,
especially towards that very end. I got fired from a Papa John's, went over to a Pizza Hut, got fired from that not long after that. Ended up living back with my parents that last couple years before things really got terrible. And, like I said, I think I had a girlfriend that broke up with me at 23 or 24 and just, tried to hide what I was doing when I was living with my parents. And it was just a miserable life of unemployed towards that very end, was living with my parents, had no prospects on, how I was going to move forward in life, didn't finish college. I had all my friends that, had finished college and they were starting to get married and have kids and, have great careers, and was starting to wonder, what is going to happen to my life. And so, totally miserable was the answer, and had no idea how to change things. And I think there was a time in there where things got pretty bad, and somehow my parents found out that, I was doing all these drugs, and they tried to help me out, but they had no idea what to do. Mm-hmm. Just non-addicts and non-alcoholics don't really know what to do with addicts and alcoholics, right? There's something that we know how to communicate with each other in a way that no one else can. And
amen.
Yeah.
So what was the straw that broke the camel's back? What was it that made you decide to get help?
So went to one 12-step fellowship, probably about 24, and just wasn't willing to do anything there. I wanted to show up at 8 o'clock and leave right at 9 o'clock, and didn't really get to know anyone well, and certainly wasn't willing to work any steps. And but somehow life did actually get better. I stopped doing heroin, but I was still drinking, and I was still doing, other pills. But life actually did get slightly better for a minute. I got a decent, a job. I was running a yogurt store, and just, I guess, started to think that, well, maybe that wasn't that big of a deal. And, which is totally insane that, just quitting heroin somehow made my life slightly better. But not too long later, went right back to doing heroin, lost everything again. And I think, my dad, he was having, I think I was living with a drug dealer for a little while. Wasn't talking to anyone, had sold my phone, just was this kind of complete recluse, and ended up talking to a friend that told me that my dad had some strokes. And so I went back thinking that somehow I was going to help out, even though I was a total wreck. And was basically just causing problems for my mom. And I think she didn't know that there were any sort of indigent treatment facilities around. And so one of her friends suggested dropping me off at a homeless shelter in Dallas. And I think that was the best that she knew. And, because she knew that she couldn't help my dad and me at the same time. And ended up breaking into a house not long after. So that lasted, I stayed at that homeless shelter for a couple of weeks. Ended up breaking into a house and ended up going to jail for most of 2011. And in that time, kind of got some time to reflect. Did 5 months in county jail and then 6 months in jail rehab. And, at the beginning, I was just trying to figure out, like, how do I get out of here and how do I go back to the awful life that I was living? But somewhere in there kind of realized that I got to make some changes, because the idea of in and out of prison, which was, the next step if I was, to violate probation, wasn't going to be a life. And I don't know, I guess after hearing a ton of people in jail stories, most of them, whether they wanted to admit it or not, had something to do with drugs and alcohol. Maybe I should probably put a real effort into staying sober. So I got out and came to a 12-step fellowship and decided, you know what, I'm actually willing to do this stuff. And just also get willing to, or, open to the ideas of, spirituality. And, I was not like a militant. I was never an atheist. And I certainly, I guess I would have considered myself an agnostic, because, where's the proof in any of this? And so when I first looked at 12 steps, the idea of, the whole God idea to me seemed pretty suspect, but I also didn't have any better ideas. And, luckily doesn't take a whole lot to just give it a try. And, started doing some prayer and realized, if I just give this a try, God started showing up pretty quickly.
So no inpatient treatment for you, all 12-step.
Yeah, well, there was,
I guess
there's jail.
6 months of like jail rehab, which is not, it's not real rehab. It's mostly just keeping people locked up. And there was, very little recovery. Just the counselor that I had in there had been sober for a while, and she kind of brought a little more recovery into it. But I think, in a way, I'm kind of grateful that it was or wasn't too, recovery related, because it led me to be starved for what I'd seen in that first 12-step fellowship, where like there's something that these people have. And, I knew that I just wasn't willing to do anything there. And so when I got out, there was like just this, I was starved for genuine and authentic people in a way that, the people in jail, just, you could tell everyone was kind of trying to act like they were important for some reason, but we were all in jail for the similar reasons. But
and we don't really have that program here. Not for the jail side, just prison.
Yeah.
And then that one don't work too well.
No.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the sad part is, like, in Dallas, there's, they consider them, it's, still basically jail, but it's, I guess later on, if you do go to prison, there's Safe P, that's the sort of prison version. But they're, therapeutic community. So it's not 12-step based of any sort. And there's no God concept of anything. Can't say that it was amazing, but I did come out of there just knowing that I got to latch on to something, and the way that I've been living my life was not a good one.
So tell us a little bit about early sobriety then.
Yeah, I got a sponsor quickly. Part of the probation stipulations were first week you got to go find someone. So one of the first meetings that I went to, the first meeting I went to was a women's detox facility that I didn't even realize it was a women's detox facility. It happened.
How'd you explain that one? Yeah, right.
It was crazy. I'd spent 11 months in jail, and I come out, and I was just looking up on the internet, where's the closest meeting, and I found this place that was a couple miles from. I went to go live back with my mom when I first got out, and went to this meeting, and I just see a bunch of like really sad, but because I'd been in jail for 11 months, really hot girls, and I immediately like try to just leave, and they say, are you looking for a meeting? Because if you are, then this is a place for you. Luckily, there was a lady that was there that told me to go to what's my home group, but she suggested that. Went over to this other meeting, and the first guy that I talked to after that meeting has been my sponsor for the last 12 years.
That's awesome.
So
that is really cool.
Celebrated 13 years. First year was kind of the jail year, and then 12 years of actually working a program. But yeah, I mean, I think he was really kind, and he'd had some problems with sobriety early on. He ended up getting sober, after bouncing in and out for a long time. And I think within, the first time that we actually sat one-on-one, I just realized this guy actually knows what he's talking about. He knows what I've been through in a way that not many other people had. And so, he gained my trust quickly. And when he asked me to do something, I did it. He told me to call him every day at 7 a.m. and did that for the first couple of years, and just, kept things really simple. He wasn't trying to explain the whole program in the first hour. It was just, show up and go to some meetings, and we'll work some steps. And when it says to pray, we pray. When it says to write, we write. And, I think that was the sort of magic of it. It wasn't an overwhelming, you got to figure it all out today. Don't have it all figured out today, right? Like, years in, there's still more to learn on this thing. But I got busy with what he was suggesting, and none of it became. I started to get to know people. I started, was told to show up early and stay late and become a part of the fellowship, and really, just jumped in.
How quickly into your sobriety did the promises of the fellowship come true for you?
I think it took a while because, I burned most of the bridges before I showed up, and people were pretty skeptical. My friends and family knew that I'd been in jail for a year, and they were pretty leery of, who I was, which they had every right to be. There was a time when I was, why aren't these people welcoming me with open arms? Well, because I lied to them and cheated and stolen from them constantly for the last several years. And, it took some actual effort. I think really, before I started doing the amends process, no one really started trusting anything. And, some of that was that it needed to take some time, but I think, it probably took, 6 or 8 months to get to the amends process. And that was when some of those promises really started showing up, that, people saw that I was really trying to do things differently today. And I mean, I'm pretty sure my mom didn't trust that I was going to stay sober for 2 or 3 years, because she just, she had some baggage that, and, I was not showing her, or previously wasn't doing very well. And so, it took her a long time to really trust, oh, Will's actually doing something right. And she also tried to keep me away from starting a business, or not, she didn't love her entrepreneurial journey because the business didn't go, super well. She stayed in business for 20 something years. But it wasn't, didn't provide her with a secure retirement or anything. And so when I started doing the Kickstarter thing, she kind of, the Kickstarter is how I started the business. And she was pretty leery. He's just, why would he start up a business? He needs to just go work for somebody. And so that probably put a damper on some of the early recovery, or, some of the promises on, well, just, she wasn't trusting much of what I was doing for a while, which was totally fine.
But what's your sobriety date?
January 29th, 2011.
When did you start the Kickstarter?
That was July of 2012. So that was one of those terrifying things in early sobriety.
A year and a half in.
18 months in. That's wild.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, right? Like I'd been out, I got out of jail in like the end of November of 2011. Found out about that Kickstarter in probably February of 12. And then, the next few months I was figuring out how to make prototypes and how to get, a decent video made. And so, there was definitely some terror with starting the Kickstarter because, what if people go searching and find who I am? And somehow it's never been a big thing. I mean, this is like the first actual public thing that I've certainly spoken at some meetings, but I've never really shouted from the rooftops what, who I am from a junkie background. And, these days I can talk about it willingly because I hope that it is a message of recovery and, message of hope, I guess.
Yes.
That people can hear that and like, wait, this guy went to some pretty low lows and somehow has rebuilt his life through a power greater than myself. God has done amazing things in my life.
Amen.
Yeah, and short amount of time. I mean, 18 months is nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They tell you not to do anything crazy in your first year.
But
Yeah. Well, and that was the my sponsor's never been particularly, rigid on timeframes for things that he, no matter what you do, it will either bring you closer to God or further away, right? And if you want to go do, some drastic things, like I told him, I think when we sat down to do our my fifth step, he told me that, I was telling him, I'm gonna do these pens, and he never told me, what kind of harebrained idea is this? Because it was definitely a harebrained idea to start off with. You're gonna go try to raise money from people on the internet. Okay, good luck. And it's always been this kind of, God's going to show you what you need to do. That you'll learn how to trust your gut, and what's right and wrong. Go do some good in the world.
so where's that first prototype?
Oh,
That's a good question.
I'm not sure.
It's locked in a
I don't
safe.
think I
It's
even
in the
still have
Smithsonian.
Yeah.
It should be.
There actually might be a box in my garage or maybe at the shop somewhere that has some of that early stuff.
We'll come down and we'll help you look for it.
Mental about things.
I have seen the collection at Tactile Turn of the pens that you have in the conference room. I'm surprised it's not in there, because that's a heck of a...
Again, I'm not much of a collector of my own stuff. Like I have,
So cool.
I don't know, 20 or 30 of my own pens, but I try to live a pretty simple life as far as not collecting too much stuff. I certainly have a fair amount of stuff, but I also just, I'm not an archivist that's really been documenting this whole journey. And there were years where I didn't know if this was going to turn out. Hell, there are times today that I wonder, how it's going to turn out, and I've got 43 employees. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm just not that sentimental on, the very first machine. I just wasn't going to have space when I actually moved into my own shop. And so people sometimes ask me, why didn't you keep that? And because it served its purpose, and then it didn't.
Yeah.
And,
I could see that with the machine. I can't see that with that pen. Me, I'd still be using it.
Yeah.
I know me.
There's also things have changed so much over the years that like, those early pens, I have to look back and give myself, some grace that I was doing the best I could with what I knew. But I look back at some of those old pens and I look, at what we do today. And it's just such a night and day difference that like, it probably took 3, 4, 5 years before I really became, really proud of what I made. And the crazy thing is like, customers always loved that stuff, even the early stuff. And so I can be very critical of some of that early stuff, but that's the way that like kind of and I sometimes struggle to say that it's an art, but within any discipline, no one starts off amazing. You got to put in some hours to get decent at something. And so I think that's probably part of the fact that I don't have a ton of nostalgia for those early pens that, I know that I was still very much learning what I was doing for quite a while.
Yeah. I think what you just said can relate to recovery in a big way.
Yeah.
You're not great right off the bat. It takes a lot of work and it takes patience and time. And I love that you stuck it out, because now we are reaping the benefits.
And I loved how he said too, it served its purpose. Like,
yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, like there's parts of our recovery and it's like, okay, that serves that purpose at that time.
Right. For sure.
So
you talked about your relationships in the midst of your addiction or substance abuse, as opposed to those relationships then and your relationships now. How would you describe your relationships now? And who were, as far as family, friends, who were some of the big people that, really helped you along the way?
Yeah. I mean, such a night and day difference, right? I was, and I'm still friends with some of my friends, from those early days. I still have quite a few friends from Boy Scout days in high school. And, some of those I'm really close with. My best friend, Eric, I've known since I was like 5. He's been through, all of it. And he's really probably the person that has really seen such a transformation. And, but there's also lots of people that, were there through the active addiction that just never, my parents passed away. So my dad passed away a week after I got locked up in early 2011. My mom passed away in 2018. And so, we were able to completely rebuild our relationship over those, I guess, so it's at 7 years, in a way that was pretty amazing that, a lady that was, she had to keep me at arm's distance towards the very end. And I think the counselor that I had in jail talked her into letting me, come back to live with her because, rates of recidivism are pretty high among people that don't have any friends or family. But yeah, just the relationship there was completely rebuilt in a way that was pretty amazing. I think her work ended up calling me the day that she passed away, because I was her point of contact. And like, I don't think I ever actually got told that I was her point of contact for anything. But, we went to lunch every Sunday. I moved out of her house, I don't know, a year or so after I moved in there. But we remained really close. Was able to rebuild the relationship with my best friend, who never really held any grudges. He was always good about that. But I've got a 5-year-old daughter. He's got a 5-year-old daughter, and I think a 9-year-old son. And so we hang out a fair amount these days. But yeah, none of the relationships towards the very end, like I was very much a recluse towards the end and shoved people away as much as I could. And these days I really do try to build community wherever I go, and have a tremendous group of friends. Did get divorced about 3 years ago, but I was married for a while. And, my ex-wife and I are on great terms. we have a 5-year-old daughter that is, the light of both of our lives. And, I guess when I did get divorced, there was and I knew that we were going to have, be on pretty decent terms, but it's just amazing that, through divorce, we can still be good friends and be there for our daughter. All the people that I work with, most of them are, it's always difficult to be buddies with employees, but generally most of my employees, especially the guys that I'm closest with at the shop, are good friends. Let's see.
You got a great group of guys that work for you, gals too.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta say, I gotta take my hats off to him because he just shared with us that his father passed while he was locked up, and he didn't go back to drinking when he got out. Hats off to you, buddy, because I'd say that would have been something that would have triggered me off the top. So the fact that you was able to come out and still continue your recovery, even though having that on you, that's some powerful stuff, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. And that's when things get so bankrupt that, you got to make some changes. That's where I was at, where, I think I know that God works in my life in strange ways. But the fact that I got connected with the sponsor that I currently have, or that I've had since the beginning, and God certainly nudges people together, and certainly we're very likely, the fact that we're talking today is God nudging me and Shane together, at a knife show, whatever, a couple of years ago. There's all those strange instances where God pushes me towards people, and I can consider it, chance, but the reality is I guess when I start asking for, I need some help on something, someone shows up. And same thing, if I can be helpful to someone else, it's hard to think that that's just chance that,
I was trying to find my very first order with Tactile Turn, but I couldn't find it. I must have deleted those old emails.
I could probably look it up, but
I was trying to figure out what year that was. And I don't even know how I found Tactile Turn.
We did change, originally it was Kickstarter for a while, and then I had a website through Squarespace, and I think 2016 or 17, we moved over to Shopify. So if it was before then it's hard to know, but
yeah, it's been a while. I do know that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, Will, thanks for sharing. And you said earlier about, you've never done it on a scale like this. And then I'm sitting here thinking, I met Shane. Shane got me obsessed with pens. This idea of a podcast was born. And then it's like, hey, this is who we really want to be a sponsor, and then it's just and then your story. And then it's like, wow, we're connected in so many ways. And I've never met you. Until right now. Yeah. And it's just kind of awesome what recovery can actually do, and that is God.
Talk about nudging people together.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, because we all write. That's all we do.
Yeah.
None of us type in this room.
Well, I tried once, but I got scalded for it.
So I don't know. Do you sponsor anybody? You have any sponsees?
Yeah. I've sponsored a ton of guys over the years, but currently, I guess I've got 3 that are active. But there are also several that have moved away. I've got one down in Austin that, I when I sponsor guys, I try to make sure that I actually see them pretty regularly. And so yeah, he's down in Austin, or a couple guys are down in Austin. I absolutely, can't keep it unless you give it away, right? And I also, it's the thing that recharges my batteries more than anything else. That, talking with someone that is going through some stuff reminds me, how far I've come. And also it's just nice to be able to feel useful. Business and personal life can be one thing, but there's just this different thing that happens in recovery that, I'm so grateful. The only way that I can never repay my sponsor for what he's done for me, but the only thing I can do that's kind of you know, a bit of repayment is trying to do the same thing with others. And, you know, my sponsor jokes that, you know, he issues a spiritual lasso after we finish that 12th step. And he's been, well, I guess I got my first sponsee like literally the next day after I was issued that spiritual lasso. And, you know, it's, I think, I don't know about you guys, but, you know, sometimes people, or I see guys that wait for someone to ask them to sponsor. And, you know, anytime I see a new guy at a meeting or someone that I don't recognize, and sometimes those people have 20 years, sometimes those guys are brand new. And, you know, it's what an honor to be able to try to, you know, share what we have with someone else. And I'm always amazed at how great it is to be able to pass this thing on to someone else. Yeah, I will never be able to thank enough for what's been given to me.
I just find it amazing you had the same sponsor.
Yeah.
It's genuinely strange because, you know, everyone has their own journeys. You know, he moved to Fort Worth, so, you know, an hour away years ago. And I was really debating, is that, you know, do we get to see each other enough? And so I was debating on finding someone else, but he ended up moving back to Dallas not too long after that. And he's just always been this, you know, this great guy that's, but yeah, no, certainly I guess it was always told to me, you know, if you, and I try to tell my guys the same thing, you know, I don't want you to ever feel like you're obligated to work with me, right? Like if you feel like you're at a different point in your life that I can't help you, then please go find someone else, right? And the fact that I'm just not going to shove this down anyone's throat. Some people need a sponsor that's really gonna give them probably more stern direction than I'm willing to give. But anytime anyone asks me anything, I'm glad to help out. And it's just amazing how wildly different everyone's, you know, sponsorship style is. I love some of those crusty old guys in those early meetings that were, you know, we're quick to tell people to sit down and shut up. And I don't really do that these days, but I'm glad that I heard some of that. And I think there's a spot for all of us, right?
Yeah, I don't know what I would have done if I wouldn't have had somebody in the meeting that said it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's what it took for me, is hearing angry Scott, hearing, if you want to quit getting a white key tag, here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
That's what it took.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how do you maintain your, sorry, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so, you know, with your sponsorship and everything like that, what does your program look like now? How do you maintain your sobriety?
Yeah. So same thing that was told to me early days. 3 meetings a week minimum. I guess, you know, those early days when we were going through the steps, we would sit down once a week and go through that. And I try to make sure that I've always got, you know, someone to meet with generally once a week to make sure that we're working through some steps with, you know, or I'm walking them through some steps. You know, prayer and meditation, I guess is, you know, a big piece of my life these days. So, you know, get on my knees in the morning and get on my knees at night, and certainly say some prayers throughout the day. Spend some time getting quiet and listening, and trying to just stay involved. I mean, we do dinner with a group of, we got a text chain with sort of my sponsor and my sort of sponsee brothers and my sponsees and those other guys' sponsees. We have a lineage meeting once a year where we get, you know, there's all of our sponsors and sponsees. It's, you know, a couple hundred people that get together every, I guess, the first December. Anyway, we our sort of more local group, we got about 20 guys that are on a text chain, and we do dinner before a Thursday night meeting. Try to go grab breakfast with the guys after I go to a Saturday men's meeting. You know, try to just be active in the fellowship. You know, was skeptical about the whole getting really involved. And I think because I showed up at 26, basically, most of the guys that were in the meeting that I went to were significantly older, and I don't know. I didn't quite believe that these guys were going to become some of my best friends. Lately, we've gotten, a fair amount more younger guys, and we've got a good mix of, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And so, really just try to stay active in the fellowship and make sure that, there for people. And I guess when I was going through the divorce, when my mother died, there's all sorts of places that people showed up for me in incredible ways, and try to make sure that I'm there for people in the same way. And, when there's a brand new guy that I haven't seen in a couple weeks that I got his number, I don't chase anyone down, but I certainly do try to make sure that people understand, where are you? Because people can just fade into the woodwork. If I was allowed to fade into the woodwork, I certainly wouldn't be here today. Mm-hmm. But because people kind of showed an interest in, hey, where are you?
That's what's cool about it. Yeah, that's pretty neat about recovery. They'll show up at your door.
Yeah, they will. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and it's a good thing, right? Because it's a lonely thing, and sometimes when you get down, it's pretty easy to think, what, it's going to just be better if I just stay home tonight. No, it's not. Go out there and go do something.
Yeah,
and it's hard to do sometimes. Mm-hmm. So you've had a lot of blessings since you've been in recovery. I mean, a lot of good things happen. But what is your biggest surprise that recovery has given you?
Ooh, I think just how amazing and how nice it is to be transparent with people. Mm. I think that was one of the early Kickstarter lessons. I ran out of money. So I made all these, like the first Kickstarter, I sold about 1,000 pins to 611 people. And I'd made that 1,000 pins, but I'd ran out of the money to do the shipping. And so I made this terrible website, and I basically did an update on Kickstarter telling people, those pins were supposed to be delivered in, I think, 4 or 5 months, and they took the better part of a year to do. Luckily, those early days on Kickstarter, people were, I got to do updates, and I got to show people the progress that was happening. And, when it came time to tell people, hey, I've run out of money, I'm going to go find a regular job. But if you want, you can go ahead and buy another pin. I made, a few extras. But I was really expecting the pitchforks to come out. And I think this has happened in a few other ways along the journey. But luckily, people pretty well understood, all right, you've put in some hard work. This has been a much harder project than you expected it to be. And there, I think we're, 2 or 3 angry people. The other 611 of them were just, congrats, you made it this far, and, sold another $3,000 or $4,000 of the pins that paid for the shipping for all of that stuff within a couple of days. But the transparency that I was able to tell people about what was going on. I'm sure I went to my sponsor at the time and told him, I don't know how this is going to go. And I'm sure I don't remember the exact words, but I know he told me basically, tell people what's going on and you'll be surprised. Mm-hmm. Because before sobriety, I was lying, cheating, and stealing from everybody. I knew that path didn't work very well. And throughout the years, if I can just tell people what's going on, and the fact that I haven't had to lie, cheat, and steal from people, I can just be a decent person these days. And there's certainly going to be problems. When the Kickstarter project was running long, I was expecting that there was going to be more pitchforks. And, especially in those early days of the business, I expected pitchforks to show up, one way or another. And somehow people were kind. And, if I was being honest and upfront and transparent about what was going on, then people showed up and were happy to support what I was doing. And that's kind of been the whole way along the way, right? Like the very first loan that I got for a brand new piece of equipment in 2015, there was a little shame on, I don't have as much in the bank account as I would like to have. And there were, I haven't been in business all that long. And when they started asking for financial documents, I was actually pleasantly surprised. Oh, wow, you've grown this business pretty significantly in these, 3 years that you've been in business. And I think there was a banker that came out that sort of was a nice mentor, kind of telling me how most machine shop guys build a decent life for themselves through real estate. And, I've been guided along when my natural reaction is not to tell anyone about anything. The best course of action is the exact opposite of that. Tell people about what's going on and be honest and transparent about it. And, people are very kind.
They can be when we get honest.
Yeah.
Were you going to ask something, D?
Yeah, man. I was going to ask, so what kind of message of hope or like inspiration do you have for our listeners out there about recovery and that?
Yeah. So I think the biggest one is, I appreciate the comment earlier about how, this week's been, or the last 72 hours have been hard, right? Like, it is not always roses. There are plenty of times in recovery that life sucks. But there's always that light at the end of the tunnel, that life does get better as long as I'm not actively making it worse. If I'm trying to push through the difficult spots, it happens. Sometimes it takes, weeks or months or years to get through those difficult times. Sometimes it happens pretty quickly. But I think we all know, I certainly know how to make things worse. Putting a drink, putting a drug on it certainly isn't going to give me any better thing. And life is not all roses, but man, sobriety certainly is the only path that I know that's going to make things better. And staying away from the things that I absolutely know can crater my life pretty quickly. It's, always been the thing. But also, figuring out that I was powerless over alcohol and drugs and everything else was a pretty liberating thing. And there was a freedom that came with that. But then there was also the next part of get busy and do some work and repair things, trust God, clean house, and help others. And, those simple words with some action change lives pretty quickly.
Yes, they do.
I like that, with action.
With action.
That's right.
Love it.
So, Will, there's no better commercial person, I guess, than you for your own product. What all do you have available for people? I mean, pens, pencils, what? Tell us a little bit about Tactile Turn.
Yeah. I didn't bring a whole lot of stuff with me. I mean, our titanium bolt action pens are kind of the staple. This is a weird PVD coating that we haven't released. I don't know if we will release it. But our bolt action pens are kind of our thing. And then we do several knives. This is a weird prototype of a different texture that we were working with Shinola on for the knives. But
Nice
and dirty.
I heard it sounds good. I can't see it, but I heard it.
I mean, that's also part of, I think we all, we're all, these things are fun and useful, and, it's nice to use a well-made thing. But there's also a fidget factor that goes along with all of it. That's just satisfying. The sounds that go with it, the feel, the tactile nature.
I don't know if you could hear
the
it.
fidget factor is probably more useful than anything else. I'm not much of they're the guys that do spinners and other fidget toys for their everyday carry. I'm not much of one of those guys, but I do want there to be a fidget factor with my pen and my knife.
I think
this weekend we're going to be launching some flashlights at Blade West or Blade Texas.
Nice.
So we're about to start doing some flashlights, but you know, bolt action pens are kind of our staple. We also do this style called the side click for pens. We got a few different knife models. You know, I love what we do because it's you know, it's the same kind of thing that I've tried to do with recovery, where it's genuine and it's honest, just clean, simple, well-made stuff, good materials. We have a lifetime warranty with everything we do. Use great quality materials from the very beginning. And you know, when it comes down to it, these are fairly simple items that are just made well. And that's why I love my company. And it's why I love the guys that I work with, because we're all dedicated to the same thing of making good stuff that we can stand behind. That, you know, we offer a lifetime warranty because we make good stuff, and you know, don't.
Yeah, and it don't really break.
Wouldn't want to see it.
You know, Will, if you need anybody to try out those prototypes, you know what I mean, just to see if you want to go to market with those, I can give you my address after this.
Yeah, I mean, just send them to
we're always looking for some extra beta testers.
waitingsover.com.
I can be a tester. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm waiting
Alpha tester, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for you to come out with notebooks. Ooh. You know,
so we've debated on that, and you know, we have gotten more into you know, for a long time I didn't really want to sell anything that I didn't make.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you know, Greg Stevens, this guy that does leather work, has made some leather slips for us, and some notebook covers. You know, the guy that does our packaging, you know, we found a guy that's local in Dallas that does packaging, and he can do, you know, bound books. And so we've considered doing, you know, smaller notebooks for note taking. There are times that I use a notebook a fair amount, and then there are times that I don't. And, you know, I think one of that conversation, I think it was last year or the year before, Shane, where we were talking about journaling, and, you know, the pen to paper thing is just entirely different from, you know, typing. That there's something spiritual that happens when I put pen to paper that doesn't happen with typing. And, you know, it was probably first illustrated when I started writing my first fourth step. The magic that is pens and paper, that somehow different stuff comes out that way than when I type it out. And I think that's one of those like reasons that I fell in love with pens to start off with, and what started, you know, all the other products that we make. But yeah, I haven't really wanted to sell too much of things that we didn't make, but I'm also starting to realize that as long as we partner with the right people that also have the same values of, you know, good quality stuff that they stand behind, you know, we probably can do more stuff. And so notebooks probably aren't too far away.
good.
Nice.
A5, please. A5.
Yeah, buddy.
I like the size of the A5s, but I remember when I left, when did those notebooks from Greg Stevens come out? Was that last year or the year before?
I think it was 2 years ago, but I don't really remember.
Because when I was in Dallas, they hadn't come out yet, and Kevin sent me home with one. So I'm on the plane taking pictures, and he told me, go ahead, post pictures. So I'm on the plane taking pictures. I'm all over the place just taking pictures of it because I finally got something early. I was happy. I was showing that off.
Showing off, right?
Yeah.
I got you, don't.
That's what we wanted to do, is promote it.
Yeah.
So yeah, having that, I got way too much Greg Stevens leather around here.
I mean, he's the nicest guy in the world, and I think that's the thing that I really like about the sort of knife EDC world is, and not everyone's a savory character, but there are generally a lot of really good guys that you know, they don't like. And I don't have a giant business, but one of the big principles that we have is make sure that we pay people well, and you know, we take care of people with, you know, decent health insurance, and, you know, try to have a good, safe shop for people to work in. And yeah, I wanted to work with other people that do the same thing. And sometimes those guys are doing it in their garage. Sometimes they have, you know, a way bigger company than us. But, you know, the thing that I like about the whole everyday carry movement thing that's going on is a lot of it is just genuinely, good people making good quality products. Because I think we've all just bought too much crap in our lives that doesn't hold up very well. And it's nice to have stuff that you really can count on.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is. And I can tell you, everybody at your shop has a big heart, and that always starts at the top.
Right.
I mean, we talked about it here, leadership. You're only as good as your weakest link.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And
I don't talk about it enough, but what Boy Scouts did for me with leadership training. I mean, if you set a decent example, then the people that are around you know who and what you are.
Yep.
well, I don't know. We thank you a ton for sponsoring the show.
Yes.
I mean, it's a tool that we all use all the way down to the knives.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is my favorite fixed blade, and I've had some really good fixed blades.
Mm-hmm.
I like this little thing. Fits well, but I'll never give up a tactile turn pen.
Nope.
Funny story. So I have two that I use regularly, and I leave one at work because I just want to make sure I have one everywhere. Well, I took it home the other day because I was working at Kirkwood, and I left it on my nightstand, and I had to use a different pen all day yesterday.
Oh, man.
It was the worst experience.
Brother, I would lend you one.
I know, and and it's funny, but it's once you get one, and I'm telling everybody, like, once you get one, you'll never want to use anything else, and that is absolute fact.
And you guys know my wife, and she thought we were crazy for buying this pen.
So did I.
Not my first pen. She thought, yeah, you said I was
I was
crazy.
going to bust you out on it,
Yeah.
too.
And now she's got three,
Uh-huh.
so it's like, okay.
I have
And
two
then
and
she
a
doesn't like
pencil.
to write with anything else either. And it's
Right.
like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
One of the gentlemen at this square circle that we got going on here almost refused to use one of these pens because he just didn't. It didn't matter to him. And he finally put one in his hand, and now you heard him. It's all he can use.
Not only that, Will, but I have one sitting in the armrest of my car waiting for him. It's the golf one, the golf seasonal. And
It will be mine.
He loves the golf.
Oh yes, it will be mine.
And he actually turned it down before he ever wrote with one. And now it's waiting for him. I won't sell it to anybody else.
I do have a question. How do you come up with your seasonals, if you can tell us?
Yeah, good question.
So, and I think this is the really great part of growing a company. My taste is, generally boring, like plain titanium or, simple colors. I'm red green colorblind. And so, I see colors a little differently than everyone else. So I'm not the guy that chooses the seasonals. The guy that does our social media, Ed Jelly, is sort of the main guy. But we have a few other people that give some input. If it was up to me, we would sell boring titanium pens and nothing else. But man, that's one of the gifts of, because, I don't need to be the only, I think it was years ago, I gave up the idea that I needed to control or that I needed to have all ideas come through me. That if you got a good idea, let's do it. Let's give it a try. And, the first seasonal safety first was like a good hit. And it took us a while to really figure out how to do, thousands of Cerakoted pins, but we now have a pretty good team, and we got two good painters and a prep guy, and we're able to crank out enough stuff where we do a pretty good job with really good job with what we do, and it's pretty neat to know that, like, I can trust all the guys in my shop that, everyone's good at a lot of different things. And if I'm here to steer the ship, certainly, but I'm not the guy that makes all the decisions on everything. I had a business partner, my first business partner, my only, but currently I've got a few guys that are also equity partners I've got, I guess, 5 smaller equity partners in the knife company, and then basically 2 guys that are equity partners on the pin side of things. I still have majority on both businesses, but what a weight off my shoulders that, the first partner came on and he basically offered his services for marketing and sales, which I'm still a big part of the sales side of things and marketing as well. But he took some weight off my shoulders, and I quickly learned that it's time to start trusting other people can do stuff. Not that I was ever, too much of a control freak, but it's been really nice to be able to find good people and empower those people to do things that I would never be able to do on my own. And so those seasonals are not my thing, but I think they're all super cool.
They are.
I'm always amazed what Ed comes up with.
We own every single one of them.
Yeah.
Not yet.
I need to get my hands on one of those
Not yet.
safety firsts, though, man. But they're just, whew.
Yeah, I have one out there. The only one we don't have is the new ice fall yet.
No, I got I did get Conley that for his birthday. My son just turned 14, and now he's obsessed with these pens too. And he 3D printed a box for it. So
That's awesome.
That is really cool.
I'll have to bring that in and show that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, I think one of my buddies, he's got a kid that's 16, and I've been trying to get him to bring the kid to the shop because the kid sounds very much like I was, where I was a pretty lazy kid, smart but lazy, and something about manufacturing and just keeping your hands busy has been really good for me. And there's something really I guess satisfying about making some cool stuff. And so I whenever I hear stories of a kid that's got a 3D printer, that kid's going places. I don't know what those places are, but I'm excited to hear what happens to that kid in 5 years, what happens in 10 years. We all have strange journeys, but it's pretty neat to when someone's got an interest in manufacturing in any way, and 3D printers are bringing a whole new generation of people to manufacturing. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Anybody got anything else?
No, I just want to, Will, honestly, really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story. And it's a pleasure to hear your story. And this always kind of, I know that these guys think a lot of the same thing. It pumps you up, it kind of gets your blood going. And seriously, thank you so much for coming on and being our sponsor and providing people with the best writing utensil there is. And we don't say that just because we use them. We say that because it's true. But thank you again. We really appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you guys having me. And I mean, it's been an honor. So thank you.
Yeah, I can't wait until everybody finds out you're really in recovery. You work a program. What's that do? I hope it really launches it and see a lot of orders from it because there's nothing better.
Right. Yeah. Thanks again, Will, man. It was a real honor to have you on the show, brother. I appreciate you sponsoring us. And tell me, when we started this podcast, I didn't see this coming, but I'm glad that, like you said, we got nudged together here. It was a great pleasure to meet you, brother.
So someone mentioned Kirkwood earlier. What was the Kirkwood reference?
So we all work in substance abuse treatment, and we have an outpatient facility in Kirkwood, Missouri.
Yeah. So my grandparents lived in Kirkwood.
Oh, wow.
My mom's side of the family. And so we would go there, so that's one of the,
all right.
Is it a suburb of St. Louis, or is it just a neighborhood in?
It's downtown Kirkwood.
Okay.
Right past the train station.
Right past the train station. Yeah.
I drove by their house, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. My ex-wife's family lives in Gerald now. So it's like an hour away. Yeah. They used to live in Owensville. And so I love Missouri. It's such a beautiful place.
He doesn't live here. That's why he can say that.
Let's just say we can't wait to come down there and do a spot because we could all use a break from this.
No one loves or no one appreciates what they've got. It's always, grass is always greener. Right? And, there are times that I look at Dallas and like, why do I live here? But there's also a ton of great things that happen.
Right.
I love Dallas cigars.
I guess an hour east or an hour west of St. Louis is really pretty country.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Well, that's where their other location is.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. About an hour and a half northwest of St. Louis. So
they're northwest. So, hopefully one day we'll be able to get down to visit Tactile Turn, eat some Trinkies.
Mm-hmm.
Best food ever.
And possibly do a podcast right there in Tactile Turn Shop. That would be awesome.
Yeah, Will, thank you. I know I'm just gonna reiterate what the guys said. I just really do appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. You know, the two things I think we could take away from this is no matter where you are in the United States, the world, the program is the same. You know, you hit on that. The sayings were the same. You know, sit down, shut up, and listen. You know,
Mm-hmm.
And when you talked about the best thing that's happened in recovery, it wasn't necessarily Tactile Turn or family. It was your character, your morals, and that was honesty. You know, and being transparent with others. And I think that's a great message to send out to our listeners for sure. So,
Amen.
I always end with a Bible verse. I know, Shane, you're going to say something, but 1 Peter 4:10 came to mind. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms.
Amen.
Man, you're good at that.
Yeah, you are.
That's your gift.
That's my gift. Yeah.
I memorize it. You look them up.
That's right.
Yeah, Will, I can't thank you enough, man. And I can't wait to see you again. Just thanks for everything. Thanks for sharing your story, because there's going to be someone out there that needed to hear it.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
You know,
It's always
bring that message of hope.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it's about. So, hey, God bless you, Will. We will see you soon. I promise you that. We will see you soon. Don't go anywhere. Let's just say goodbye to the listeners.
Yeah, for all the listeners out there, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We are on all podcast platforms. Will, thank you again from Tactile Turn, our amazing sponsor. We will see you guys next week.
Peace.